Hello and welcome to a short tutorial explaining how to create your train's region. I will be showing you the config of the region and explaining every single line in it so that you can understand what is what, why it is there, what it does, and so on. So let's get into it. You have your trainz launcher open and visible. Select Manage Content. This will open your content manager. I recommend using an already existing region. For the purposes of this tutorial, I will be finding Central Europe region for my purposes and selecting it. Now, after selecting it, you press Ctrl D. This will clone the asset into a new one and assign it to your ID. Alright. So now, if everything's gone correctly, it will be all green. If something's gone wrong, you will get error notification. It will be written there what has gone wrong. Read it, you should be able to understand it. If not, there's trainz wiki, link down in the comments. Description. You can check that. If it says something about payware, you have to find a different region asset. Alright. So now, when you've cloned it, the asset is going to be called new asset. So find it. I found it here. Alright. Select it, right click it, hover your mouse over open, and you can see it shows more options. I'm going to be clicking the edit config file text. This should open up in Notepad. I'm going to make it bigger so you guys can have it a bit easier to read it. Okay. So I'll be talking you through all of this. Don't worry. You can see there's a lot of numbers, a lot of things. Don't get scared by it. It's simple. Alright? Good. So, let's get into it. First line we see here is kind. Before I actually got into this, I forgot to mention the order of things might be different to what you have. So, for example, the longitude and latitude can be somewhere at the bottom, the trainz-build can be somewhere on the top. It can be randomized. It doesn't matter where the position is. You can always change it around if you want to. It's not a big deal. The game will have no problem with it. At least it shouldn't have a problem with it. And yeah, you can just pretty much change it to what I have right here. Alright, so let's get into this. First line here is kind. This allows for additional searching when searching for the asset. It's a required field. It needs to be here. It helps to tell the game what the asset is. It helps the DLS to know what the asset is, and it helps you, the player, to know what the asset is in the content manager. So keep that at the region. Username. This refers to the name of the asset. So let's change this to tutorial region. That's going to be the name of our asset. Category class. If you've cloned a region, it should be YX. That is the category class for regions. Don't change it. For other category classes, they're on the trainz wiki, link in the comments, description, so you can check that out. Category era, not a required field. And what this does, it allows users to search for this asset a bit easier if there is a particular era to it. This here, for example, is 2000s and 2010s. there isn't 2020s yet, and you can select the eras as back as 1850s. It's 10-year increments, so 1850, 1860, 1870, blah blah blah. You get it. All the way to 2010s. So for the purposes of this, I'm just gonna keep it at 2000s, for example. Next up is category region. This is a required field. However, you can have several definitions within. What this does is the shortcut or abbreviation of the country. So, for example, Denmark is DK, Slovakia is SK, Germany is DE, and so on. America would be US, Russia would be RU, Japan would be JP. For the purposes of this, let's say I want France, so I'm gonna put in FR. Next line is on the right. This line tells you whether the traffic in the region will be driving on the right of the road, on the right side of the road. If it's at 1, they will drive on the right side of the road. If it's at 0, they will drive on the left side of the road. I'm gonna keep it as 1 since we are in France. Watercolor. I recommend keeping this as 0. Those are RGB numerals. So red, green, blue. It's up to you to change them. I personally recommend keeping them all at 0. You will be changing them, or you should be changing them in the environment settings of your route anyways. That is, if you know how to actually do that. But that's a discussion for a different time. Next up is default junction. Now, this is what junction lever asset is going to be placed automatically on newly created junctions. Kinda confusing? Let me explain. When you create a new junction, after you've changed the region, an automatic lever will be placed unless you change that in your train settings. A lever will be placed. I'm going to change the region here to something else. And I'm gonna place a new junction. You see, the asset is different. The junction levers are different. So that's what stands for the default junction lever change thingy. It changes. The junction lever is going to be automatically placed when making junctions. Okay. Let's change that, for example. Let's put it a different junction lever. So go into your content manager, find some junctions that you want to use. I'm gonna be using this one on the bottom. Select it, press Ctrl C, so copy. Over here, you can go back into where you have your new asset. Go into the config, select the kuid, that's not the default junction, and Ctrl V. So paste in the different junction lever and remove the text after the kuid. QID is the string of numbers here. So remove the text behind it. Just leave the number string. All right? Good. Next up is longitude and latitude and altitude. So let's go through them one by one. Actually, 2 and 1. So longitude and latitude are referencing to geographical coordinates, or pretty much GPS coordinates on the planet. To change these, I recommend using the website called latlong.net, and it's quite nice because, I'll make it bigger, you have the entire world map here, and by clicking at different positions you can get the different coordinates from the world. Since I am making a region set in France, I'm gonna select France. you can see the latitude and longitude over here. What's in our config? Let's make this a bit bigger. Sorry, no, smaller. So like this, and put it in here. So first things first is the longitude. Let's change that because you can see there's a string of 5 numbers. This can be 4 numbers as well. And I'm going to show you how exactly with the longitude that we have here. So the way to do this, the first set of numbers is the set of numbers before the dot over here. So in our case, I'm going to be replacing the 48 with 2. Next up is another set of 2 numbers, so 99, and then the last set, 2. The last number is only 1. So you will have 4 or 5 numbers maximum. Next up is latitude. Here we see we have 46, 0, 0, 0. That's perfectly fine and okay. Keep it like that. You can see we have 5 numbers, we have 4 numbers. You can switch them around if you want. It will put us somewhere, I don't know where. Maybe down here something, you know, stuff like that. For now, we're in France. So, now we have our longitude and latitude set. What is the altitude? The altitude is what height the route will shift in. This can be from minus 3000 to plus 3000, and let me explain and show you what exactly this means. So, I'm gonna place a new baseboard here. If we try to get the height, we can see it's at 0 over here. Okay? I'm gonna place in a little test hill for us. Just like that. We can see that it's tall approximately 35 meters. We'll actually make it a plateau, why not? A flat area. So, 35 meters. Let me change to a region that has a different altitude. And that, for example, is Hungary. Now, if I get the height, you can see it's 114. So the entire route has shifted in height by 114 meters. And you remember this one being at 35 meters? It didn't get squished or put into a hole. It shifted by those 114 up as well. So now this hill is at 149 meters. If I were to make a hole at the height of 0, like this, and then change the region back to something that's at 0 originally, you can see that this hole is suddenly 114 meters deep. So this is what altitude means. It will change the base height of the route, and it will either shift it up or down according to what you set it as. Let's see here. Let's just see. I don't mean the person in France. I wanted to get the average altitude of France, but I kind of, yeah, I've just embarrassed myself completely by using the completely wrong English method of searching stuff. So I'm just going to set the altitude to 50. No, not 560. Jesus, 50. Okay. So yeah, that was not exactly as I wanted. I hope I still yes, okay, good. Now that was our altitude. Now trainz-build. This refers to trainz version this region is going to be available for. The newest TRS19 build is at 4.8. The very first TRS19 version, as was 4.6. Trainz-12 is trainz-build 3.7. And Trainz the New Era, I believe, ranges from 4.0 to 4.5. I'm not too sure exactly on that, but I think it is like that. So, if you want your region to be used in, for example, trainz-12, you have to set it to 3.7. This will also make the region usable in later games. So basically everything newer, every build number higher than what you set here is going to be able to access this region and use it. However, anything smaller, like 2.9 for example, will show this region as incompatible. Now, another very important tidbit that's going to be merged with the next thing that you see here, and that's the cars, is that every single vehicle in this region needs to have equal or lower trainz-build number than the region. So you cannot put in a vehicle asset that has a build of 4.7 while the region is a build of 4.6. It will throw an error, it will not work. It will show as faulty and stuff like that. Alright, now what do I mean by vehicles? Every single region can be assigned its own vehicles that move on the road, that drive along the roads. You can have 100 vehicles in a region. You are starting with car 0 and you end with car 99. Okay? 100 vehicles, 0 to 99. And the same way you have seen me put in the default junction QID, you are going to put in the vehicle QIDs. Now, don't go all jumping happy that, oh yeah, finally I can put houses as my vehicles or some planes or ships or something. No. Bad news for you. You cannot put objects as vehicles. You can only put trackside objects as vehicles. What are trackside objects? What are they? These vehicles here, these cars are trackside objects. These are the ones that you have to use if you want to have your traffic be on the road, if you want the traffic to drive on the road. Now obviously there are different assets from all the different time eras on the DLS and some other places as well maybe, so there's a different selection. This is just my selection for this particular region. So yeah, there are 1920s cars, 1950s cars, there's American cars, there's European cars, there's Chinese, Japanese, blah 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 blah. Whatever cars you want. So yeah, there will be the vehicles that spawn and drive on the roads. So there you can have 100 of them. Okay, after that we come to the description. Once again in quotation marks because it's a text. You can put in pretty much whatever you want. It's a description of the asset, describe the asset, I guess. So yeah. Next up is thumbnails. This should be, well, not should be, but well, that's for a different asset. For you here, if you've cloned, there is going to be a thumbnail, but you should change it. If there isn't a thumbnail, then you will have to make one. So how do you make one? Go into your content manager, find the asset that you have here, the asset that you're editing, your new asset, the cloned one, the region asset. So right click it, open, and select show in Explorer. Now, over here, you can see the thumbnail. And from the config, we can see that it's called CE region. In other assets, it can be called thumbnail, it can be random streak of letters and numbers and blah blah blah. I'm going to edit the thumbnail image. It, by the way, should be 240 times 180 pixels. At least it should be a reference to it like that in the config. It doesn't have to actually be that size here. So for my purposes, I'm actually going to change the resolution of it to that. So 240 times 180, and I'm going to make it completely white. I'm going to save it. I'm going to rename it to thumbnail. Now you have to make sure that the thumbnail is a JPEG, and I cannot stress this enough. Make sure it's a JPEG. If it isn't, it will not work. Simple as that. So now we've changed the name and we've changed the thumbnail completely. So over here there's a reference to image. Let's change that reference a little bit. Keep the .jpeg part of it, or add it if you don't have a thumbnail in here, and put in thumbnail. Make sure that it's simply make sure that the image has the same name as the image you reference in the config. Alright, and yeah, there's the width of 240, there's the height of 180. So yeah, I can put this into the description as well if you want. So no big deal. And that's the end of it. Or is it? What is QID table? It's nothing. Well, it is something. There is a purpose for it, but for you, it's nothing to worry about. It will generate automatically. You don't need to touch it. It will create itself automatically with all the assets. Alright? Good. Now, on the very end, the very last thing is the QID of this cloned asset. Don't touch it unless you want to make a higher version. I'm not going to go into that right now. Alright. So, it's the QID. It basically is the ID of the asset. The first 6 numbers, or whatever numbers you have for some reason, are referencing to you, your user, so your account, and the other numbers reference to pretty much which content this is, the number of the content. So you may have created like 500,000 amounts of contents, you would have 500,000 in there, I don't know. Just an example. So yeah, that's just reference, that's just the number of the asset itself. Don't change anything in that QID, otherwise you will have to go through more steps than you would like to, honestly. So, there is all of this. Thank you for watching. And I kind of fucked up because it's not all of this. Because we've done the changes, we save the notepad, we close the notepad, we close the Explorer thing, and now we select our asset, right click it, and submit edits. Now you see it kind of disappeared. That's okay, because now the name that we have given it has in fact been saved and is there. So now our region is called tutorial region. It exists. So yeah, that is all now. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope you've learned how to make new content, or precisely how to make regions. And yeah, have a good day.